Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome to the December 2018 episode edition. I don't actually know what word to use. Session? What do we call this? Gathering of Recite poetry. And some of you may not know, this has been going on for 3 years now. We started, it was October was the first one. I think it was October, because the first one I came to was November. Yeah, October, 3 years ago, this started at Montvert. Yash Dembinski, Jeff Levison, and kind of them decided to do this thing, gathered a few people, and started doing it, and 3 years later, we're still doing it. Jeff moved to China, and that's a problem, but, other than that, we're all still kind of here. No, he's in demand, I guess. I think it's what it is, yeah. So let's see. Before we start, a few announcements. I have a few. January 1st is the first Tuesday, and the library's not open, so we're not going to meet that day, unless you want to meet outside in the cold. We're not going to do that. So Tuesday, January 8th, the second Tuesday, will be our January meeting. The library in this holiday season has a raffle going where tickets are $5 and it's filled with a whole bunch of really cool stuff, including the latest Louise Penny book and all sorts of stuff. Several poetry books and all sorts of stuff. You can see the contents of the raffle out there. Tickets are $5. All the money goes to support the library. I think I will start with a poem. As I've said before, I've never written a poem in my life, and so I picked different poets to sit with their work for a while. And this last month it was Maya Angelou, and I was flipping through some stuff, and then Thanksgiving weekend I sat with a book that's a collection of a few of her books put together, and I picked out just some fabulous stuff, and I have just quite a few. So I'm going to pick a few of these out to say she's just amazing. So let's see. I should have thought this through better. You guys will have to wait for me. Sorry. Okay, here, I'll do two short little ones together. The first one is called How I Can Lie to You. Now thread my voice with lies of lightness, force within my mirror eyes the cold disguise of sad and wise decisions. The second one is called Sounds Like Pearls. Sounds like pearls roll off your tongue to grace this eager ebon ear. Doubt and fear ungainly things with blushings disappear. It's a very short, but good. Okay, so it's going to be a total crapshoot of who goes when, because I just wrote down everybody's names now. So is there anyone who would particularly enjoy going first? She's not on the list.
I'll go first.
You'll go first. So the first one will be Richard Esty.
All right.
Thank you, Richard.
Then I can fall asleep the rest of the night.
And watch it later on TV. Yeah.
Watch it later on TV. I like watching it on TV because I try to listen to myself and see how many words I stumble over. And secondly, I like to see the way the rest of you read so well. And so that's always fun for me. Yoss asked me who my poet is tonight. I didn't tell him, but I said, it's a poet who has a birthday, whose birth date is December 10th. Anybody know? 1830. So the poet would be 188 years old, or 188 years ago. 9 points if you can get that. Do I need to get more hints? Okay.
Whitman?
No, his girlfriend. Emily.
Dickinson.
Emily Dickinson.
Oh, okay.
So I did write a poem about Emily Dickinson and Walt Whitman meeting, but I don't have that one tonight, but I'll bring it sometime. Okay, I'm going to
He would
recite.
wrap his lines around her.
What's that?
He would wrap his lines around
Well,
her.
right, well, yeah. Almost. Okay, I'm going to recite a few of her poems, and then, sort of in the middle, this past month I was reading from the library a collection of Galway Connell's poems, and on page 444, I came across this poem called The Deconstruction of Emily Dickinson. So I'm going to read that and then read the poem of Emily's that he was talking about. So I'm going to start with, as you know, Emily didn't title her poems, but in the Johnson edition, they're all numbered, so I'll use the Johnson numbers. 1129, it may be the best known of her poems. Tell all the truth, but tell it slant. Success in circuit lies. Too bright for our infirm delight, the truth's superb surprise. The lightning, as lightning to the children ease, with explanation kind. The truth must dazzle gradually, or every man be blind. And number 18, the gentian weaves her fringes, the maple's loom is red. My departing blossoms obviate parade. A brief but patient illness, an hour to prepare, and one below this morning is where the angels are. It was a short procession. The bobolink was there. An aged bee addressed us, and then we knelt in prayer. We trust that she was willing. We ask that we may be. Summer, sister, seraph, let us go with thee. In the name of the bee, and of the butterfly, and the breeze, amen. And then number 193, I shall know why. I shall know why when time is over, and I have ceased to wonder why. Christ will explain each separate anguish in the fair schoolroom of the sky. He will tell me what Peter promised, and I, for wonder at his woe, I shall forget the drop of anguish that scalds me now, that scalds me now. Okay, now we're going to read the Deconstruction of Emily Dickinson by Galway Connell. The lecture had ended when I came in, and the professor was answering questions. I do not know what he had been doing with her poetry, but now he was speaking of her as a victim of reluctant male publishers. When the questions had dwindled, I put up my hand. I said, the ignorant meddling of the Springfield Republican and the hidebound response of literary men and the gulf between the poetic wishfulness then admired and her own harsh knowledge had let her see that her poems would not be understood in her time. And therefore, passionate to publish, she vowed not to publish again. I said I would recite a version of her vow. Publication is the auction of the mind. But before I could, the professor broke in. Yes, he said, the auction. Auction. From auger, from auctum, to augment, to author. Let's hear the poem, several women who at such a moment are more outspoken than men shouted, but I kept still and he kept going. In auctum, the economy of the signifier is split, revealing an unconscious collusion in the bourgeois codification of consciousness. Doesn't that sound like a professor? While our author says no, the unreified text says yes, yes. He kissed his lips together and turned to me, saying, now may we hear the poem? I waited a moment for full effect. Without rising to my feet, I said, "Professor, to understand Dickinson, it may not always be necessary to uproot her words. Why not first try listening to her? Loyalty forbids me to recite her poem now." No, I didn't say that. I realized she would want me to finish him off with one wallop. So I said, "Professor, I thought you would welcome the words of your author. I see you prefer to hear yourself speak." No, I held back, for I could hear her urging me to put outrage into my voice and substance into my argument. I stood up so that everyone might see the derision in my smile. "Professor," I said, "you live in Amherst at the end of the 20th century. For you, auction means a quaint event where someone coaxes out bids on butter churns on a summer Saturday. Forget etymology. This is history. In Amherst in 1860, auction meant the slave auction, you dope." Well, I didn't say that either, although I have said all of them many times in the middle of the night. In reality, I stood up and recited the poem like a schoolboy called upon in class. My voice gradually weakened, and the women who had cried out for the poem now looked as though they were thinking of errands to do on the way home. When I finished, the professor smiled. "Thank you." So what at first some of us may have taken as a simple outcry, we all now see is an ambivalent self-subversive text. As people got up to go, I moved into the sanctum within me, where Emily sometimes speaks a verse to me, and I listened for a sign of how she felt, such as, "Thanks, sweet countrymen, for wanting to sing out of me after all that humbug." But she was silent. Publication of the mind. Publication is the auction of the mind. Poverty be justifying for so foul a thing. Possibly, but we would rather from our garret go white unto the white Creator than invest our snow. Thought belonged to him who gave it, then to him who bare its corporeal illustration, sell the royal air. In the parcel be the merchant of the heavenly grace, but reduce no human spirit to disgrace of price. And if I have enough time, I'd like to recite two more. One is, number 875 is, "I step from plank to plank, ashore in cautious way. The stars about my head I felt, about my feet the sea. I know not but the next would be my final inch. This gave me that precarious gait some call experience." And then the most recent poem of Emily Dickinson I memorized is number 324, and it begins, "Some keep the Sabbath going to church. I keep it staying at home, with a bobolink for a chorister and an orchard for a dome. Some keep the Sabbath in surplice. I just wear my wings. And instead of tolling the bell for church, our little sexton sings. God preaches, a noted clergyman, and the sermon is never long. So instead of getting to heaven at last, I'm going all along."
Thanks, Richard. Let's see. Anne Schaffmaster, would you like to be next? Anne Schaffmaster.
Hi. I wasn't sure what the format was, so I just brought 2 of my own poems. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, format's loose.
It's loose. Good. The first poem is called, can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's not the title.
That does not magnify your voice for the room.
Oh, it doesn't?
That's only for the recording. So
Oh.
you need to project.
Okay, I will then.
Richard
Okay.
can't hear you.
Hello. Okay.
I'm old and deaf.
Okay, put your hand up if you can. This first poem is called Personal Energy Report. In the last 12 months, I have used 26% more electricity than my efficient neighbors, but 17% less gas, which boils down to my having used 9% more energy than the subset of above-mentioned efficient neighbors. In the last 2 years, I have smiled at my smiling efficient neighbors 98% more than just about anyone else who lives here, and said hello another 98% more than my energy non-friendly efficient neighbors. Maybe, just maybe, I like inefficiency. I care not to save my friendliness and prefer to spend the extra time not lowering the human temperature of connection. I don't give a hoot about leaks because I love gossip. And I much prefer all the gaps and cracks of an interesting discussion. I suppose I could put duct tape over my mouth to prevent word loss, but this repair would be like closing the window on kind-heartedness to save $168 a year. Thank you. This one is called Tough Love. I imagine a child leaning into you, maybe tired and wanting to be lifted up onto your shoulders for a ride. But years have gone by. I have a new hip and my hair has turned gray. You might not know me if we walked past one another on a busy street, though I know that I would know you. That's how it is with mothers. In kindergarten, you fell off the jungle gym and broke your arm. You didn't tell anyone. At 12, you spent a lot of time gaming with much older boys, and I worried about car accidents and drugs. But what do you do with a kid with a genius IQ? Maybe I could call you and say hello, or call you and hang up, just to hear your voice again. But the sky is darkening now, with that familiar flicker of shifting light. I think of what I will prepare for dinner. Later I can watch some TV. I think of giving up this thinking of you, cutting back the thoughts so that something new can grow. But love is tough. It doesn't put up with being told what to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Peter, would you like to go next?
Well,
Okay, Peter Fox Smith, everybody.
I have 4 poems tonight. The first 2 are about a December night, and they were written in North Pomfret, Vermont, where I live, and they were written 50 years apart. The first one from 50 years ago, entitled December Night. The twisted fingers of my tallest beech it is really me that does the belonging, lie still across the moon's holy white gray-boned cheek. And like argent bracelets on gypsy arms and rings on every finger, the haughty hemlock branches show their snow. The brook rings in its silver shoes, and the black jawbone sky arches sleeping wings around the turn of the hills. And while I walked, the sheepdog and I, the no man's land stars flickered and beat against my jumping stomach's wall. 30 years dissolved this night. A boy again received the virgin world unmediated in his mindless humming heart. My God, one could almost believe in God again if one forgets what happens when the sun pulls its red eye up into the ice-blue morning sky and the throngs rise to rattle and to jar the very teeth in the great Mother's holy face. One on such a December night could almost believe in God again if his heart could overrun the head and he could forever forget that he is one of much too many men. He could almost believe in God once more, were it not for too many people, most of whom are poor. And the 150 years later is entitled Biscuits for Oliver, and it has some footnotes, so let me clarify what those things would be for you so that maybe you would have otherwise stumbled, I don't know. First of all, Solveig's song is from the Peer Gynt suite of Edvard Grieg, and it is absolutely a beautiful song. Then there will be a little German, and it is German with my talking to our daughter's dog. He's a German short-haired pointer, and he's bilingual, and I speak German to him and give him his commands in German. And the commands that you will hear are very simple. Sit, remain, give me your paw, good dog. And lastly, there will be some singing by Kirsten Flagstad, a Norwegian woman who is said to have had the greatest voice of the 20th century, and she sings 3 songs of Grieg, and I mentioned the songs in Norwegian, and they are A Swan, I Love You, and the last one, A Dream. Biscuits for Oliver. I was seated next to her in grade 8. Never had I seen such a girl. She wafted my wits away. She sought help in history, not her favorite course. Or was she just being coy? Who was Prince Henry, the navigator? I loved history. I knew all about Prince Henry, and I shared with her what I knew, and somehow suggested a movie date, followed by so much more for 8 years when she became my wife, 61 years ago, And now Solveig's song is on our stereo. The soapstone stove crackles with glee. And Oliver, a German short-haired pointer, our daughter's family dog visiting us while they ski the mountains, begs for biscuits from me. I give him his commands in German. He's bilingual. Setze dich und bleibe. Eine Pforte. Gut, sehr gute Hand. Outside, 2 feet of snow. Rest. The storm is past. The moon pushes clouds aside to look down upon a world of white that he makes much more bright of a silver-plated night. Oliver now curled tight on his bed. We listen to Kirsten Flogstad singing songs of Greek. En Svan, je elsker deg, en dram. It is a Norwegian night in these harboring hills where there's no other house to cast its light. What do I notice of the difference of December nights in 50 years is that the old man still is pretty much of a recluse up there in North Pomfret. The third poem I have for you is entitled Sarah and Seth. It's in 2 parts. Part 1. Summer said hello early in May after ice and snow with travel by sleigh to the village store. Mud season now done, warm sun does implore spring chores are begun. But no need to think it through. Shoring fences, gardens plowed, rehearsed year after year, and a mind meanders to afternoon trysts with neighbor's wife not far away. Void of guilt, crafted connections inspires their play 2 years long, growing each day with easy communique. His wife, mistress of the village store, her farrier husband traveling far, allows lovers naked in their need for passion's embrace. He deep inside, 2 as 1, in symphonic harmony of reciprocating cosmic thrusts, crescendoing climax, subsiding sound, gentle kisses, love's silences beyond morality, from forces unknown, irresistible ecstasy, conquest of bodies conjoined in nature's knot of a never no delirium. Part 2. For part 2, there are 3 footnotes. I'll give them to you now. In Greek mythology, the Furies were goddesses of vengeance. Megaera was the Fury that took vengeance on infidelity, as in the case of Seth with Sarah. And Aphrodite is the goddess of love, and she insisted on love manifesting itself in spite of infidelity. Part 2. Oh, such fucking frolics will in time be revealed. So what then of lovers, a farrier, a woman at the village store? What then? There are codes one ought not violate, and when it's done, the furies rage. Megara's wrath, Aphrodite's anger, goddesses confronting, each demanding they prevail. But now all gods are gone. Do we manifest our own unholy fracas? Love making parts, vibrant with desire, vying murky minds, questions vague, answers astray. The chthonic crisis comes, deep, dark, black as death, from the base of being, nowhere we know or ever will. Sarah and Seth, soon unresolved enigmas unto themselves. It is not easy to be alive. The last one, I've noticed in this group that there is a definite interest in Rilke, Rainer Maria Rilke. And I also have an interest in Rilke. And so I'm going to read you a translation of one of my favorite poems of his. And basically the reason I'm doing this is because you really cannot translate poetry. You can't, first of all, translate the rhyme and meter. You ought, at least if you're going to make a version of somebody else's poetry in your own native tongue, you ought to get the words right. And the most common and famous translation of the archaic torso of Apollo begins as follows. The first line: we cannot know his legendary head with eyes like ripening fruit. Well, Rilke didn't write anything like that. The reason that there's a problem is that gehörtes Haupt does not mean legendary head. It means unheeded or unknown or missing. And secondly, Augenapfel, two German words, eye, apple, does not have anything to do with the ripening fruit. Augenapfel means eyeball, or the eye itself as it matures or ages. So, the famous person wrote, we cannot know his legendary head with eyes like ripening fruit. Here's my translation. We know not his missing head wherein the eyes did age, but his torso still glows like a candelabrum in which his countenance restored therein is preserved and shines forth. Were it not so, the curved breast could not blind you, and in the gentle turn of the loins, a smile could not reach to that middle which carried the genitals. Were it not so, the stone, mutilated and short, would stand under the clear sloped shoulders and would not glisten like coats on the beasts of prey, nor burst out of its borders like a star. For there is no place which does not see you. You must change your life. Bravo, Rilke.
Thank you, Peter. Let's see. Corey? Mhm. Okay. Corey Cook is next.
Hi, my name's Corey Cook, and I live in Thetford Center. I grew up in South Stratford. I had heard about this months ago and have been trying to get here, so I'm happy to make it tonight. I'm going to read 2 poems from my forthcoming book, which is going to be released by Finishing Line Press in January. The first one is entitled Searching for Jane Kenyon. And it starts with a quote from Donald Hall from his poem Ardor, which is in the Painted Bed collection. Can everybody hear me? Kind of? Yeah. She recedes into the Granite Museum of Jane Kenyon, 1947-1995. I pull the car onto the shoulder of Route 4, under the shade of a red maple, sit and stare at the graveyard, the sloping hill, headstones, their long shadows. Wonder which one is hers, if she picked it out herself, or if that unfortunate job was left to her grief-stricken husband, who filled books with poems about her illness, her death. Wish I could tell her that having it out with melancholy has been a lifeline for me. Reminds me that I'm not the only one that draws the curtains on sunny days, ignores the telephone, lets it cry in its black cradle, goes without groceries, unable to walk into the general store, to face the cashier, the good-natured banter of the regulars. I decide I'm not ready to say goodbye for the finality of it all. Stay in the car, feel for the tablet of Xanax, a lump in the throat of my pocket. At home, another drug to try, one that just might reacquaint me with the talk button on my phone, the store, the warped wooden floors, narrow aisles, dust-covered cans, the cashier who will call me by my name, will ask where I've been. And the second. Nana's last boat ride. We planned to show her the wild blueberry bushes on Oliver Island, the freshly painted door of her favorite cottage, the loon's nest on the muddy embankment, but she was not able to hold her head up, the latest side effect of Alzheimer's. So she stared at the floor of the boat, the rusty anchor, the coiled nylon rope, the shadows cast by her children, her grandchildren, shadows so indistinct they could only belong to strangers. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. So your book is coming out in January? Are there places where people will know it will be if they want to order them? Purchase them?
You'll be able to order online. Hopefully it'll be in a couple local stores.
Okay.
I haven't crossed that bridge yet, but
And this library does author readings for people. If you're interested in having one, we can help you with. I work here too. So, yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Thanks for sharing your poems with us. Okay. Let's see. There's no perfect way to do this. I have a few things I want to read, and and you know, I think one of the reasons I don't write poetry is that it just takes a lot of guts to pour all that stuff out, you know, and to find how I feel in someone else's writing is reassuring, for one thing, and also they say it better than I feel I could, and then it's just very comforting. Anyway, but so I'm going to read some poems of Maya Angelou that kind of depressing love poems and things like that. So this one is called Now Long. So, and I did all these all weekend, and I wrote them really tiny so they'd fit in my book. So that's I have to wear glasses so I can be sure to actually read the words. Okay. Now long ago. One innocent spring, your voice meant to me less than tires turning on a distant street. Your name, perhaps spoken, led no chorus of batons unrehearsed to crush against my empty chest. That cool spring was shortened by your summer, bold, impatient, and all forgotten, except when silence turns the key into my midnight bedroom and comes to sleep upon your pillow. Another one, and this one I wasn't gonna read because it's too sexual, but Peter, you've like given me boldness to actually talk about this sort of thing. So thank you.
I opened that door last week. Last night.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, and you kept it open this time. And this poem, when I read it, was just, it's amazing. It's called Remembrance, and she wrote it for Paul. Your hands easy, wait, teasing the bees hived in my hair. Your smile at the slope of my cheek. On the occasion, you press above me, glowing, spouting readiness, mystery rapes my reason. When you have withdrawn yourself and the magic, when only the smell of your love lingers between my breasts, then, only then, can I greedily consume your presence. Isn't that incredible? Yeah. Okay, and now let's go to a couple.
Is that how women work? Is that how it works?
Yeah, we're all
I
we're all the same. We all work exactly the same way, don't we?
My girls here, we can ask.
Because all men work exactly the same and all women work exactly the same, right? So, okay, so this one is called Refusal. Beloved, in what other lives or lands have I known your lips, your hands, your laughter, brave, irreverent, those sweet excesses that I do adore? What surety is there that we will meet again, on other worlds, some future time undated? I defy my body's haste. Without the promise of one more sweet encounter, I will not deign to die. And this one, sort of like after all of that stuff, this is called The Lesson. I keep on dying again. Veins collapse, opening like the small fists of sleeping children. Memory of old tombs, rotting flesh and worms do not convince me against the challenge. The years and cold defeat live deep in lines along my face. They dull my eyes, yet I keep on dying because I love to live. Let's see, one more before break. Yash, you're usually our last for the first half person. You okay?
Yeah. Last for the first half.
Yeah.
Okay, Rilke. I do have one. The next poem in his series. It's I think it's number 7, and it goes, praising. That's it. One appointed to praising. He came like the oar, forth from the stone's silence. His heart, O ephemeral press for a wine that for men is unending. His voice never flags in the dust when the godly example grips him. Everything turns to vineyard, to grape, ripened in his sentient south. Not mold in the vaults of kings gives the lie to his praising, nor that a shadow falls from the gods. He is one of the staying messengers who still holds fast into the doors of the dead, holding bowls of fruit worthy of praise. Okay, I'll give you the choice. I do have a section of Moses in Israel memorized because that's what I'm doing, and it's really helping me to do a third draft of this long poem, and I'm really kind of amazed at how many revisions I make. And I was going to recruit Peter and Bob to be Moses and Aaron. They don't have many lines. The narrator has most of the lines. Or, this is going to be a hard choice, I hope, or I can recite a poem that I wrote when I was about 25 and I had wanted to be a monk. I never thought I'd be able to marry. Just for whatever reason, I never thought I could marry. And I imagined the genesis of the poem was wondering, is there really true love, true marriage here on earth? And I envisioned, I wrote this poem imagining what I was very religious at the time, two saints' marriage would be like. So I gave you the choice. Because which one?
First.
Which?
No, second one.
Given
The
your
the 25-year-old one.
Second one? Okay.
Yeah.
Second one. All right, so this is the way it goes. And that's good because I won't, it'll be less time. But we'll get back to you guys, okay? All right. And I want to tell you one last thing. I found, even though I had no hope of ever being married, the poem did fulfill itself in my marriage, or has fulfilled itself. So this is the way it goes. Between the saplings of two holy trees, beneath their limbs of wondrous fruit and shade, there is a leafy arch, a nuptial glade, where we may rest our marriage bed on knees, caress in dalliance each wish we please. Emerald flora will our bower braid, drop ripening fruit on our pillows laid. Lullabies shall waft through the evening breeze. My gentle love, me your lips draw in sighs, your eyes are brighter than the stars' soft fires. Come, let us love by the light of the moon. If morning sun should arise, you will be my arch flowering desire. God shall compass our love, midnight and noon. So, thank you. Thank Jenny. And I was actually somehow thinking of like St. Teresa when I wrote it when I was 25. I don't know what was going through my head, but it came out, so thank you. And when I remember my wife singing lullabies to my daughter Katie, and I would, lying in bed listening, I thought, boy, lullabies are wafting through the evening breeze. This is great. All right, I have a last poem. I'm kind of excited. You know, usually at this December, the last two times, this is the third, I've recited that poem. A man-child comes down a mountain seeking a spring's well of grace, because I like it and it seems Christmassy, but I was wondering, could I write another Christmas poem? And lo and behold, I had this idea. The way it happens to me, I get these ideas. Where they come from, who knows? But they're part of all of us. And I thought, whoa, that could be an amazing poem. So I spent about 5 days, dedicated days trying to write this, and I think I got it. You'll be the judge. It's called A Christmas Poem. A grandfather reads a poem at Christmas. His granddaughter is in wonder, listening. Reach into the poem and hold the clear orb. Shake it and see the snowflakes glistening. She is confused. Her mind cannot absorb the reality he reads. Her eyes pass over the page, and all the words she sees begin to dance and form a clear image of an orb, and in it a castle high, within the confines of words on a page. She smiles at her grandfather. She will try to do as he says, and her spirit frees its youth's joy from a stuffed, coiled dimension. Envisioning in the poem, she reaches and takes hold of the clear crystal orb, cool to her touch. Shake it and see what it teaches. Then around the castle the snowflakes spool and fall beyond her imagination. Now, shake the orb. Actually, Peter, would you come up, read the grandfather for me? Yeah, I took most of your lines already, but you just have such a wonderful voice. Why don't you start there? Shake it and see what it teaches.
And where do I stop?
Well, just stop right. Yeah, see the quotes.
Shake it and see what it teaches.
Then around the castle the snowflakes spool and fall beyond her imagination.
Now shake the orb from side to side and see. The magic of time changes the castle.
Her grandfather nods when she looks shy and confused. Was its beauty so fragile?
You must be brave. You will understand. Try.
She shakes the orb side to side awkwardly. And lo, where the tall castle disappears, a fabulous temple merges in place, with snowflakes glistening down as before. Joy's astonishment alights the girl's face. Can she her own strange miracle adore? The orb up and down she moves. There appears the same temple, but with all the snowflakes falling round.
Shake it again, side to side.
Grandfather urges. What will happen now, she wonders. But she shakes it side to side. Behold, medieval ornate buildings grow amid the falling, glistening snowflakes. She is so excited. Another world, another has emerged for her wonder and imagination. The orb is so magical, but as a child, her father thinks she cannot fathom the gift or grow yet in its mystery. His dark brows curled with a suspicious look at grandfather, who notices and says with a sly look back,
Only once more then, love, from side to side.
The daughter does so, across, back and back. And wonder of it all she cannot hide. For there, side by side, a tall skyscraper stands. Two identical, rectangular blocks soaring above a cityscape's haze. Can I do this always? Will it always change?
Yes.
Says grandfather with a warm gaze at daughter and father.
Now and always, but you have many other presents. Are you not going to learn and play with those?
So the granddaughter withdraws from the poem and gets off the couch and takes up a doll she names Mary, kisses it. Now you're home, Mary, with me. In other whispers droll, she plays with Mary, and presents she'll choose in that warm, joyful room of family, of thoughtful and blessed imagination, just like what yours may be. For every wish that is full of hope and love, creation can realize, though poets embellish the truth now and then, and, well, happily. Merry Christmas.
I work at our
What do you do there?
I work at.
All right.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. The second half is going to be shorter than the first. We have 3 more poets to read. And then, but then at the end, we have a little addendum if everyone sort of lingers out in the main part of the library for a bit. There will be a little something that will happen. And you'll have to just wait to learn what that is. That's all. Okay, you can wonder about it. Right now, let's see, Bob McCrae, are you ready to go?
Yep.
Okay, we have Bob McCrae coming to read. Or you want me to do a little something while you get settled? I'll do a little something. I'll read one because there's like so many of these in here I want to read. Wait, I'm going to do a short little thing. I'll do a Maya Angelou. This is called I Almost Remember. I almost remember smiling some years past, even combing the ceiling with the teeth of a laugh longer ago than the smile. Open night news eyes-eyed, I watched channels of hunger written on children's faces, bursting bellies, balloon in the air above my day room. There was a smile, I recall, now gelled in a never yester glow. Even a laugh that tickled the tits of heaven, older than the smile. In graphs, afraid, I see the black, brown hands and the white, thin, yellowed fingers, slip sliding from the ledge of a life forgotten by all but hatred, ignored by all but disdain. On late evenings, when quiet inhabits my garden, when grass sleeps and streets are only paths for silent mist, I seem to remember smiling. Okay, there you go. Now, just to pep them up for you. I thought Bob McCrae.
I found out about this today,
Oh, cool.
about 5 hours ago.
How'd you find out?
Maggie,
Oh, okay.
I came to present the possibility of having some of my paintings that move from library to library all around Alice in Wonderland. Here, maybe, we'll see. But I found out about this and she invited me to come, so. And I had to borrow some glasses. This is called America Was Conceived. It's a little bit long. That's the only thing I'm going to read, so. America was conceived in the barking of cranes and in the moaning of geese at night, and in the laughter of translucent dolphins dancing in the Amazon. America was conceived by territorial tribes engaging gods on sacred mountains, on northern coniferous and southern rainforest battlegrounds. America was conceived by cactus deserts and by buffalo plains and by prairie dog grasslands, by volcanic eruptions and seismic faults, by Hudson Bay subarctic ice, and by Rio de Janeiro sands. America was conceived by Andean slopes, by Patagonia Plateau, by breathless Baja Peninsula and rich Mayan coasts, by Gulf hurricanes, Sargasso Sea, and the Caribbean coral shoals, and by the human migrations crossing and recrossing interiors. America was conceived in the mummified remains of deities entombed with tokens of fate, household vessels, and artifacts of solid gold. America was conceived from royal civilizations brought down by contagious disease, by gunpowder, and by alcohol. America was conceived on hilltop carved slab of sacrifice and matrix of measured stone monoliths, where central placement observed Earth's seasons and the moon's cyclic months, and priest or priestess spoke through a channeled vortex at equinox or solstice, while the victim's blood dripped into the table groove. America was conceived by prolific species and vast forests, and confluence of rivers and pristine lakes. America was conceived by wildlife untouched by technology, chronicled by latter-day trapper explorers and utopian Christian saints. America was conceived by jaguar and coyote, and by Canada's great white bear ranging far south to the upper Mississippi, and by the temperamental grizzly. America was conceived by eagle and condor, by vulture, raven, rattler, anaconda, yellow-haired cougar, howler, by the bobcat lynx, by ocelot and screaming wolverine, by salmon spawning upstream, hungry piranha, civilized beaver, and herding elk, and by the gray and white patched black-capped chickadee, braving winter, by tiny feared warrior hummingbirds, vivid parrots, fishing egrets, proud turkeys foraging in snow, Republican pelicans, and by the chemical ant, exoskeletal cucaracha, virus-laden mosquito, tarantula, and by killer bees, and by the many-voiced camouflage drab or multicolored poisonous frogs happily croaking out spring. America was conceived by Egyptian reed rafts mastering an unfathomed Atlantic deep. America was conceived by Southeast Australasians who'd hopped across the not-so-Pacific. America was conceived by Alaskan land bridge in forced march and frozen sleep. America was conceived by shrimp-fed pink flamingos standing offshore one-legged in Floridian shallows. America was conceived by herbivore virgin mermaid manatees of sex-starved sailor fantasy. America was conceived by impenetrable swamps and their 200-pound snappers and half-ton alligators, the yawn-jawed, scaled crocodile of bayou and live oak, and by the quick, stout-snouted caiman of Venezuela's Orinoco River, and by moisture-veiled, unearthly springs of high Amazonian Brazil. America was conceived by conquistador, God of wrath and wrath of God, missioned to singular purpose of self-indulgent virtue and morality. America was conceived by El Dorado. America was conceived from Bering Sea, boasting immense schools of fish, fierce predatory sharks, great blue whales, thick-skinned seals, walruses of ivory tusk, and blubber cleaved by outland harpoon gunboats, now retired to maritime museums or long sunk, and by anthropologic common sense foretold that heroic splendor time forgot. And the augment of these is America, and the autochthonic being of America is fertile, and the antecedent indigenous tribes chanting, some warring, some gaming, all gathering to yet struggling within, will again surface and ascend. All traditions from tricontinent human thought and belief, all practical or spiritual knowledge, all worship to gods, to God, or to gold, all forgotten medicine, all lost dreams, all surrender or otherworld destination, all legacy avowed to rise up and fight again tomorrow, all imbued history and prehistory permeating this present, all unconscionable mistakes America harbors, must learn from, all atonement for greed, fraudulent confidences, economic bestiality, political imprisonment, slavery, ethnic, religious genocide, intimidation of opinion or doubt. All base characters in defiance of liberty, scheming unnatural madness. All fed up, rabbled mobs, festering resistance. All opposition to oppression, all those who speak out without regard to life or consequence and live by or die from that resolution. All truth of each brought by the pulsating heart. All brave movement toward a kind and rational unity, maliciously perceived as belligerence, hypocrisy, misguided ideals, frustrated libido, or cowardice. All that the never before gone to war fight for. All long for reconciliation. All that veteran soldiers reveal of their horror, living a fragmented peace, questioning hate's prudence and its reality, asking some personal pardon by God, or fomenting grief and so drowning in that. All those that cannot rise again, the multiple millions mud-rotted corpses by gravity, their bones buried in mass, the omnipotent compost in some promise of civilization. All those living, maimed, in humble hospitality, awaiting resurrection, recognition, or life support one day from their governments. All those abiding elsewhere, seeking placement in this grave and curious ordered universe. All those escaping poverty that send home their earnings rather than despair. All the tears that come from theirs are children crying that vapid, unapproachable hope of democracy and of this ephemeral life. Our implicit, intrinsic, commonplace to justice come from a privation of trust. Have a quiet pride and carry human dignity. Right? I said that was probably 10 minutes. Pretty close.
Thank you very much.
Just, so your time was 13 minutes altogether.
Okay.
But it's totally fine. We're not complaining
Close.
at all.
And
But-
she's just guessing. She doesn't keep time.
No, I actually keep time just so when Macy looks at the video, he knows when each new person comes along because he puts the person's name, on, and so it's just a helpful thing. So it's not to be annoying, although I can just tend to be annoying.
Everything can be misinterpreted.
Yes, right, and it's really easy for me to be annoying. So, Ann Bauer, would you like to read next?
Sure.
Awesome.
I'm going to start by reading a couple of poems by others. And it's really hard to choose because I love them all. But this is one of my great favorites. It's Robert Hayden's Those Winter Sundays. Do you know Robert Hayden at all? African-American poet, died in 1980. Sundays, too, my father got up early and put his clothes on in the blue-black cold. Then, with cracked hands that ached from labor in the weekday weather, made banked fires blaze. No one ever thanked him. I'd wake and hear the cold splintering, breaking. When the rooms were warm, he'd call, and slowly I would rise and dress, fearing the chronic angers of that house. Speaking indifferently to him, who had driven out the cold, and polished my good shoes as well, what did I know? What did I know of love's austere and lonely offices? Isn't that fantastic? So good. And this is a poem that a lot of you know. It's Galway Kinnell's Blackberry Eating. It's just so delicious, and it's so much about language. Has everybody eaten blackberries? So you know. Blackberry eating. I love to go out in late September among the fat, overripe, icy black blackberries. To eat blackberries for breakfast, the stalks very prickly, a penalty they earn for knowing the black art of blackberry making. And as I stand among them, lifting the stalks to my mouth, the ripest berries fall almost unbidden to my tongue, as words sometimes do, certain peculiar words like strengths or squinched, many-lettered, one-syllabled lumps which I squeeze, squinch open, and splurge well in the silent, startled, icy black language of blackberry eating in late September. I think that's just so brilliant. Yeah. So, I read those things and then I have to read my own work. But I have a couple of poems here that are not quite as gloomy as some of my other poems, so I thought maybe I'd offer those. My son is named Isaac, and Isaac means he who laughs. Okay. He's a good laugher. And one day on the telephone, he told me this story. My kids tell me things I don't ever want to know. That's like, I really didn't need to know about that. So this is Isaac's story that he told me just very recently. So Isaac just turned 50. So this is the story he told me. Isaac, he who laughs. At 23, on rain-slicked road, test-driving minivan, Ike slams on brakes to test the steering, but spins out of control. Fear, guardrail too close, harsh screech, car thumps, breath slows. He's fine. Assesses damage, untangles fender. He's rain-soaked. He's worried. The cost will be horrid. But back at the dealership, salesman goes human. Your head, your back. You sure you're okay? Screw the car. Our insurance will cover the cost. Here's a pen. Here's a form. Hold us harmless. Sign here. And he does. And he leaves in his old beat-up hatchback. Miles away, starts to laugh at the rain, at his luck, to the brink, but then freedom. To the brink and full breath. And he says it out loud, and he shouts as he drives, "Free wreck! Free wreck! Free wreck!" Okay, this one's called Goats Prefer Interacting with Happy-Looking Humans. The title comes from Harper's Magazine. I don't know if you know Harper's Magazine, but they have on the last page, they have something called Findings, and it's these absurd pieces of scientific research just sort of thrown in there, helter-skelter. So, goats prefer interacting with happy-looking human beings. Okay. Our Swiss goat refused company of her kind, braved 6 strands of electricity to stand triumphant near our porch. Eager for conversation, telephones ring, hum of mower, the children's laughter, hissing geese and nickering pony. Chickens in search of bugs, our red hound lazy in tall grass, tumbling striped kittens. Ignored the indignity of toggling chain and 2 cement blocks tethering her near the barn and house. Each morning after milking, I'd try again. Lead her and the others into the pasture, close the fence, throw the switch. But here she'd be again, watching me hang laundry, read to my children, shell peas. Each evening, on the milking stand, she stood easy, chewed her handful of grain, listened as I fetched about the bills, the chores, my husband's moods, accepted her small stall and fresh hay, greeted the other 2 with polite bahs, as if she'd never so rudely abandoned them that morning. Okay, and my next one, we used to have a cat named Slayer. We inherited him from somebody else, and he was a slayer. He killed mice and chipmunks. He was very good at that. As he got older, he wasn't so good at that, and then he died. Graceless. Can you hear that? Graceless. I've replaced our cat, old Slayer aptly named, whose death opened the house to mice. I set old-fashioned traps each night, pressing soft cheese onto copper-colored holders, padding down to the basement, pulling back the rectangles of hard wire, setting the springs, and each morning prowling past the cobwebs for fresh victims, padding back upstairs into warm kitchen, leaning over the compost pail, clawing back the wire rectangles so each dead mouse, ears so thin and delicate, fur soft, eyes round and black, comical, thin, tail, pointy nose, sharp-nailed feet, falls among the coffee grounds and carrot peels. Later, like the cat, I creep across ice and snow, deliver dead rodents to our outdoor waste pile, and back indoors, watch through the picture window as crows attack the pile like fussy shoppers, pecking, strewing aside unwanted items, seeking their meaty treasures. Okay, so now this poem is very gloomy. So I'm not leaving you with a happy note, but I really need to read you this poem. I don't know about the rest of you, but I usually bring new poems because I need to hear them, and I need to feel people with me when I'm reading them, and it changes how I perceive what I've written. Okay, so this is very new. And the title is A Woman Named... What is her name? Food pantries, well-stocked bins tucked behind converted mill building, driveway pocked and muddy, milk and cereal, canned stew, oversized cucumbers. She hauls her take to the old Subaru. Drives past sewage plant, past fading maples, to the rental with cracked glass windows, tape and cardboard crisscross glass, abstract of her days. She's clean now, but Mom has her son. Scorns her pleas for a loan. Has a job, but she's failed too many. The town's gossip travels with her. Like a scarlet O blazed on her worn sweatshirt. Each Thursday, she drives past her son's school, the ski slope, up Uncle's gravel road, vacuums and dusts, irons fine light blue shirts and his wide-waisted khaki pants, wipes counters, table, shines the kitchen faucet. And when he opens the door at 6:15, back from the store's long aisles, she's ready on the plaid sofa, only the kitchen light pale on her washed skin. I've never written a poem that's a made-up story about somebody else, so it was an interesting experience to try and imagine this person who's trying to recover from opioid addiction, but kind of enmeshed in a family situation that's so lousy. And it was such an interesting experience to just try and do that. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing it with us. Okay, so we have one more poet, after which we can all just sort of mingle out there for a little thing. There's a couple things I wanted to say, though. One is, in this whole thing of telling stories, it reminded me that this upcoming next weekend is Wassail Weekend. And on Saturday, we're going to have Hamilton Gillett, geez, I never remember which it is. I ask him and he tells me, and he reads Dylan Thomas's A Child's Christmas in Wales. He does this every year. He does it at noon and he does it at 1, and he does it beautifully. And he does that up on the mezzanine the Saturday of Wassail Weekend. And then at 4 o'clock, there is a vocal group going to give a little concert. And Friday afternoon at 4, there's always storytelling in the reading room. And the person we had lined up this year wasn't able to be here. And so it's going to be me. I'm going to read a story by John Muir, which is a true story about him and a little dog. And it's like one of the most amazing stories I've ever read. It's just this lovely little thing. And I won't say the name of it because then you'd look it up and read it and you wouldn't come. So you have to come. But it's a beautiful story. And the hard part for me is not getting all choked up at the end. At least not so much that I blubber and stuff, so I can still get through it. So anyway, yeah. So January is going to be January 8th, not January 1st, because we won't be here. And after this, go out and, one thing you can do when you go out is you can look at the raffle basket, the $5 ticket raffle basket, and see all the lovely things in there. And so that's all that I have to say. So we will finish with the poetry of Bob Burgess. Ta-da.
Thanks, Corey, for referring to Jane. For those of you who don't know her, she's a terrific poet, Jane Kenyon. Many know a little poem of hers, which I'm sure Corey knows well. Otherwise, yeah. So here's some more childish confessions regarding spiritual journeys. Christmas sermons, New Year's resolutions. In my usual optimistic fashion, full of holiday cheer. Do you hear it? No. Give it time. From this old April Fool. So this quiet, long life of mine is getting shorter by the day. And what the hell am I supposed to do besides standing here trying to figure out just what it is that this precious little life of mine is supposed to accomplish in order to find that one last big play before it's all over and I join the vast hollow of nothingness and memory? What do you expect me to do? Now that I be sermonizing, pontificating, carrying on up here in the bully pulpit, high up now in the house of the Lord, suddenly leapfrog the bounds of all petty thoughts and desires, love without limits and conditions, climb the still mountains of meditation and consciousness, catapulting myself out of all small selfish attachments into the greater universe of God? Give me a break. I'm only human. Easier said than done, my friend, to say the least, while trying to pretend to talk the talk, still afraid to walk the walk, stuck in the same old damn lifelong cocoon, just looking for some comfort, calm, peace, and quiet relief from the pain. Longing still for that long-lost youth, Christmas morning playground, kids and toys sitting by the fire, lollipop presents dropping everywhere, dancing young in the sweet, gentle rain, when time was forever and life had no end. Growing up is so very hard to do. Growing old, too. You old fool, you. Yep. Obviously. Some of us sometimes still feel we be living lives of quiet desperation. Getting older by the day. This ain't no rehearsal, it's a real deal, the actual and final play. So what do you want from this life? What are you gonna do with it, Carol? Really? Are you working on it? Don't wait too long. Maybe a little comic relief on the subject is in order, Courtesy of Shel Silverstein. Little tale about a little boy and an old man. Some of you know this one. Said the little boy, sometimes I drop my spoon. Said the old man, I do that too. The little boy whispered, I wet my pants. I do that too, laughed the little old man. Said the little boy, I often cry. The old man nodded, so do I. But worst of all, said the boy, grown-ups, don't pay attention to me. He felt the warmth of a wrinkled man's old hand. I know what you mean, said the little old man. Here's another little something on the same subject from David Budbill. When I was young, I believed my work and passion would get me where I wanted to go. Now my hair's fallen out, and I know nothing I have done amounts to anything. My life is like the bird's path across the sky. It will leave no trail. Okay. Well, it's Christmas. So once again, let's go from the brooding personal microcosm, micro-universe to the larger macro-universe, and end this time with something a little more upbeat. It's about time now. Hopeful for the whole world, seriously, by listening to the poet Pablo. Picasso sometimes, but this time Neruda. And let's play a little and do some riffing on his Keeping Quiet poem. You know it. Hope does spring eternal. So here's his simple little idea. How about we all try and count to 12? And see if we can all keep still. For once, on the face of this earth. Let's not speak in any language. Let's just stop for 1 second and not move our arms or anything around so much. Wouldn't that be an exotic moment? Without rush, without engines, we would all be together in a sudden strangeness. Fishermen in the cold sea would stop hunting the whales. Men gathering salt would look down at their hurting hands. Those who prepared green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victories with no survivors, would instead, believe it, put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade, doing nothing. What all this is should not be confused with total inactivity. Life, life, life is what it's all about. I want no truck with death. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving, and for once could do just nothing, perhaps, just perhaps, a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening, therefore, everyone else with death. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead and later proves itself to be alive. So come on. Let's all count up to 12. You want to do it all the way? I don't know. Sounds like 7, 8, 9, 12. And if we can all stay silent and quiet, I too, can finally be silent now and just shut up. But can we all just stop and look around like they tell you in church? Take a minute, look at the person next to you. Can you just stop and look around and see who we really are? What do you think? Wouldn't that be nice? Thanks for listening.